Good morning, everybody. Hey, Southern Mom, mac and cheese. Oh, girl, you need to come up here with me if you know a lot about this case. I was a kid when this went on, and I do remember it in the news a little bit, and I'd watched the movie a long time ago. But here, about a month or so ago, I really got into this case and just watching everything I could about it and reading. And I have watched the movie, the Betty Broderick story, like 5 or 6 times. I'm like obsessed with it. Like, part of me feels bad for Betty, and then part of me is like, damn, she's a damn nut. You know, because she did do some crazy things, and we'll get into that. Oh, it is a great movie, and it's here on YouTube, Mac and Cheese. I had watched it a long time ago, like I said, but then I got back into this case and found it here on YouTube. And I cannot pronounce her maiden name. It's Biscaglia or something. So Betty met her husband. We'll just get right into it, because I've been wanting to do this and I'm excited. And yesterday I felt bad because I said I was going to do it and then got distracted by photos. I got a little distracted with him this morning, but not too bad. I'm not even going to get on photos because then I'll just start bitching about him. So Betty met Dan Broderick at the University of Notre Dame in 1965. And Dan Broderick was from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It says he was the eldest son of a large Catholic family. Both his parents were descendants of Irish immigrants. And I think Betty is from a large Catholic family as well. Good morning, Susan. Yes, I love Meredith Baxter. She is such a great actress. I could pull a picture before we get started of Betty up, what she looks like now. And I found a picture. Let me see if I can find it. So we got something to look at. Well, let me see. Let me screen share. I hope this don't mess up my stream. As many people that use the StreamYard, you think they would improve it. Okay, hopefully that's showing up for y'all, because I'm using my phone to look at information on Betty. Plus, I got some stuff wrote here. She kind of looks the same. If you look at her pictures, like during her trial and stuff, she's got like the same kind of hairstyle going on. So they met at college in 1965, Betty and Dan did. And Dan said as soon as he met Betty, he knew that he was going to marry her. And he was actually going to school to be a doctor. Well, him and Betty got married on April 12th, 1969 at the Immaculate Conception Church. And Betty returned home from her honeymoon, pregnant with her first child, her daughter Kim, in 1970. She gave birth to 4 more children. Daughter Lee, 1971, and 2 sons named Daniel in 1976 and Rhett in 1979. And she also had an unnamed boy who died 2 days later after giving birth. Now, I don't know if this is true or not, but in the movie, it said that Dan was out of town when Betty gave birth to the baby that died, and he died 2 days later. I'm just wondering why, if the baby was born and then he died 2 days later, why he doesn't have a name. It's always been something I wanted to know. Let me pause for a minute, y'all. I've lost my daggone stuff here. But anyways, Dan's in medical school. Betty is working, supporting Dan as he fulfills his dreams. I do think he got some loans and stuff like that to help him through it. But eventually, Dan decides that he doesn't want to be a doctor. So then he goes to law school and he becomes a lawyer. Hey, Ginger Locks, Love Hollis. I don't see Andrew either. Where is Andrew? Is Deb in here? Didn't see Deb. Hey, Deb. Okay, let me get back to it, y'all. I'm having a little trouble getting started, but that's all right. I'm not going to worry about these headphones. They keep cutting off. Okay, it says, after Kim's birth, Dan completed his MD degree at Cornell University. He then announced his intention to combine his medical experience with a JD degree. I don't know what that means. He enrolled at Harvard Law School. Betty became the main provider for the family, working to support the family while Dan attended law school with the help of a student loan. Dan was an attractive prospect for many firms that had backgrounds in medicine law, and he was quickly hired by a law firm in San Diego, California, and the family moved out to the community of Coral Reef. Betty continued working part-time, often selling Tupperware or Avon, while being devoted to the children, as Dan still worked to build his business reputation. A lot of people sold Avon back then. My granny sold Avon, and she did really, really well at it. I would actually have to go help her deliver. And I'm sure that Betty did really well at it as well. It's so weird because my granny's name's Betty, too. Okay. So Dan began to specialize in medical malpractice cases. At that point, when the money was plentiful and stable, Betty functioned solely as a stay-at-home mom. She focused on caring for the children and being a housewife. And they were living a life of luxury. They were members of an exclusive country club. They went to all the best parties with all the rich people. But then things started to go downhill. Their marriage had never been like a perfect marriage. You know, who has a perfect marriage? But her and Dan seemed to have really explosive fights. One time, her and Dan got into it, and she threw a ketchup bottle at his head. I don't know if it was a glass one. Remember, they used to have like the glass ones. And then one time, Dan threw an empty aquarium off the second floor. Tupperware is ridiculously pricey. I know it. Avon's a little bit expensive too, some of the stuff in there. Okay. And then in the fall of 1982, Dan Broderick hired a 21-year-old woman named Linda Colkina. She was born in 1961. She had recently been fired from her job as a stewardess at Delta Airlines. So she became his legal assistant. It says she was of Dutch descent and came from a large, close-knit family. Now, I've often wondered how she got the job of a secretary. Because according from what I read and stuff, she didn't have any typing skills or anything. I've often wondered if Dan met her at work or if he really met her on like a flight somewhere because she was a stewardess. Be interesting to know that. If y'all know, let me know. And it says, as early as October 1983, Betty suspected that Dan was having an affair with Linda, and she accused her husband of cheating on her. He denied engaging in extramarital sexual relations with Linda Colkina, telling Betty that she was crazy. Eventually, the marriage broke down, And against Betty's wishes, Dan Broderick moved out in February of 1985. He bought his own house and eventually he took custody of the children after Betty dumped the children on Dan's doorsteps one by one. See, Betty didn't want this marriage to end. She felt like Dan owed her. She looked at like marriage like as a contract, and I guess it kind of is. Like she had fulfilled her half of the contract. She had got him through med school and law school. Now he's this big highfalutin attorney and stuff, and now he's done with her. That's the way she looked at it. So she thought if she would drop the kids off one by one, it would show Dan how hard it was to be, take care of the kids and stuff. But you know what Dan did? He just went and hired nannies and stuff. And Dan was a good looking man. I think it kind of went to his head, after he became a lawyer and became successful and stuff. I think he had a nose job and started wearing all these expensive clothes and stuff. And the more successful Dan became, the more strain it put on their marriage. Okay. Started running my mouth and lost where I was reading. Okay, she dumped the children off one by one. Okay. Then Dan, it says, confessed to Betty that she had been right all along. He had been having an affair with Linda Coquina since January 1983. And I think that sent Betty off the deep end. Now, Betty, she was a woman you didn't want to mess with. Like one time she went to surprise Dan. I believe it was on like his 40th birthday. She went to surprise him, took champagne and all this. When she got to the office, his secretary said he had went out to lunch with Linda. Well, she said that she would wait in Dan's office, and when she opened the door, there were all these party streamers, balloons, 2 wine glasses, and some chocolate cakes there. She waited on Dan all day. He never came back to the office. She was waiting on outside of her home when she finally went home for him to pull in. And when he did, she confronted him, accused him of having an affair with Linda. He denied it. She said he was a liar, and she had all of his clothes in a pile out on the lawn. And she doused them with something and struck a match and burnt off his expensive clothes. She really meant business. They always say, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Her kids went through hell. Nobody thought of them. I know it. They seen her do a lot. She said a lot to them she shouldn't have said. It said, okay. I lost my place. Okay, so afterwards, they had a long, drawn-out, and very hostile divorce, kind of like Fotis and Jennifer was going through. And it says, Broderick versus Broderick became one of the more infamous divorce cases in the United States, not least because of certain legal issues involving women who had worked while putting their husbands through graduate and professional school. The long drawn-out Broderick divorce was finalized in 1989, 4 years after Dan filed the petition. Betty's behavior at this point became increasingly more violent and irrational. He retained custody of the children, though this was for non-financial reasons. He had been looking after them for some time. During this time, Betty started leaving hundreds of obscene messages on Dan's answering machine. Him being a lawyer and all, he recorded all of these messages. She also started vandalizing his new home and breaking into it and things, so he got a restraining order. But this did not stop Betty. At one point, she actually drove her truck, I guess that's what it was called, it looked like a truck to me, Bronco something, into the front of Dan's house while the kids were there. She knew the kids were there when she did this. Says, and he went for a younger woman. Second wife was 17 years younger. Yeah, he just, like, she just, I mean, really, she did. She just stepped into Betty's life. That is the truth. Now, Betty brought a lot onto herself, but he kind of did replace her. I don't know. Maybe he got tired of her behavior. I mean, she always criticized him. You know, she just got to the point she couldn't stand Dan. But then again, she didn't want to live without him either. She didn't want nobody else to have him. Okay, he regained custody of the kids. Okay, she ignored countless restraining orders that forbade her from setting foot on Dan's property. It goes on to say she drove her car into the front door, despite the kids were home. And then on April 22nd, 1989, Dan and Linda were married. Now, what I thought was pretty shitty about this is they chose just like days from it being like Dan and Betty's anniversary. Like maybe like their 18th anniversary, something like that. So, like, I don't know why they had to get married in April. That's beside the point, I guess. And Linda actually wanted Dan to wear a bulletproof vest at the wedding, but Dan didn't, and there was no incident or anything that happened at their wedding. But Linda was quite afraid of Betty. Now, I don't know if this is true, but in the movie, allegedly, Betty had stole the wedding guest list. And I think the courts and everything tried to get it back, but she would not give it back. Well, in the movie, Linda goes to Betty's house. Betty's not home and finds it. And Betty called everybody on that wedding list. She was really hurt. Like, her whole life was Dan and the kids and stuff. And when he left her, I mean, the kids went with him, which I know that was her fault. But, you know, the friends, everything was gone, she felt like. Their friends that they used to engage with, they really, you know, they still liked Dan. They were socializing with Dan and Linda and stuff. And I think they chose Dan over Betty because of the way that Betty behaved. And Betty did have a boyfriend. Now, I'm not sure what Betty Broderick's boyfriend's name was, but she did have a man. I wonder how he felt about this, because she was completely obsessed with Dan and Linda, especially Dan, just obsessed with the divorce and everything. You know, Betty was awarded $16,000 a month from Dan, and she was still pissed off. Plus, she got custody of the eldest daughter, the eldest child. She didn't do herself any favors by acting like a lunatic. I know. I can't imagine that woman mad. I mean, we all know what she's capable of. But, I mean, can you imagine back in the day, just to be a fly on the wall listening to her and Dan argue? Because she had quite a temper. Okay, so Betty claimed that Linda and Dan taunted her and tortured her by sending her facial creams and slimming treatment adverts by the mail. Now, I don't know if any of that's true. She said that Dan always called her ugly, old, stupid, and crazy. I think those are the words that she used at her trial. But I don't know if any of that was ever proven. Everybody seemed to like Dan, but not everybody seemed to like Betty. Okay. So Betty ends up buying a Smith & Wesson revolver. And Betty used to be in some kind of gun club or something back in school, and they said she was a really good shot with a gun anyways. But 8 months after buying a Smith & Wesson revolver, And 7 months after Dan and Linda were married, Betty Broderick drove to Dan's house at 1041 Cypress Avenue in Marston Hills, a neighborhood in San Diego. Betty used a key that she stole from her daughter Lee to enter the house while the couple slept, and she shot and killed them. The murders occurred at around 5:30 a.m. on Sunday, November 5th, 1989, 2 days before Betty's 42nd birthday. 2 bullets hit Linda in the head and chest, killing her instantly. 1 bullet hit Dan in the chest as he apparently was reaching for the phone, and 1 bullet hit the wall, and 1 bullet hit a nightstand. Dan was 44 years old, 17 days shy of his 45th birthday, and Linda was 28 years old. Now, the evidence that worked against Betty at trial was the fact that she removed the phone/answering machine from Dan Broderick's bedroom so that he could not call for help. Medical evidence indicated that Dan had not died right away, and Betty admitted that he had spoken to her after she shot him. And Dan's last words were allegedly, "Okay, you shot me, I'm dead." Now, after Betty committed the murder, she contacted her daughter Lee and Lee's boyfriend. And then Betty turned herself into police, never denying that she had indeed pulled the trigger 5 times. Betty's explanation at both trials, the first trial was a mistrial. I lost my place. Okay. She indeed pulled the trigger. Betty's explanation at both trials was that she had never planned to kill Dan and Linda, and that her crime was not premeditated. I believe she said she wanted Dan to listen to her. Nobody would listen to her, and she was going to go there and she was going to blow her brains out in front of Dan and punish him forever. But she said that Linda moved in the bed and the gun just went off. I guess it just kept going off 5 different times, right? Okay. At her second trial, her account of the murders changed. At the second trial, she said Linda was screaming, "Call the police," and she immediately fired the gun. And I believe at the first trial, she just said that Linda moved in the bed. They said that the joke around town at all the high society parties was, it's be nice to your ex-wife week. People were making jokes out of it. The first trial was pretty dramatic. Her defense attorney put up pictures with Velcro of Betty's family, friends, all that crap, and started ripping them down. Dan took her friends, took her money, took her very identity. It seemed like that Betty had a lot going on mentally. A lot. Because, people are hurt after a divorce and stuff. And then eventually they get over it. They may, have some hard feelings towards their ex or whatever, but they get over it. They don't go and kill them and their new wife. Betty couldn't seem to get over it. I mean, she got ordered $16,000 a month, and she was still pissed off. And got custody of the oldest kid, which was a teenager. And it still wasn't good enough for her. Nothing was good enough. She really hated Dan for leaving her. They say that she relied on him for her whole identity. Crazy thing about it is, before all this happened and Betty and Dan were still together, everybody loved Betty. They said that she was like a great mother. All the mothers liked her. All the kids that came over loved her. But she just became this really bitter person when things started going downhill. Yeah, Susan, she had so much she could have done with her life. She's really an intelligent person. She really is. Um, but it just wasn't good enough for the money. She wanted to drain Dan, drain his bank accounts, really make him pay for hurting her. She was just so blinded by hatred and stuff. She couldn't see what it was doing to her children and stuff. I've tried to find the whole trial of Betty Broderick, but I can't find it. I only find little clips. And I actually found a clip where she's talking to her son. It's being recorded, of course. And he's only like maybe 9 or 10 years old, maybe. And he is begging his mom to stop calling his dad's house. Stop using the vulgar language. And the kid says something like, he doesn't like you anymore, Mom. He's with Linda now. And she actually tells her son, well, do you know your dad was effing her when he was still married to me? And stuff like that. I mean, she said some really crazy things to her kids. Hey, Florence. I didn't see you come in, girl. I'm walking around looking for my daggone cigarette lighter I lost somewhere. I have no idea what I did with it. I think I felt one, though. This story has fascinated me since it happened. Oh, I know. After I got into it, and I just ran across the movie one day, and I had remembered watching it a long time ago. But anyways, I just got really fascinated by it. But Betty acts like a Fruit Loop. I mean, she acts like someone that's dingy as hell sometimes in some of her interviews. She probably could have made parole if she had have took responsibility for her actions, but still to this day, she doesn't think she done anything wrong. She thinks that they drove her to murder. And actually, I think one of the jury members at the first trial, after it was like they couldn't come to a verdict, and stuff, they actually made the comment, I can't believe it took her so long to kill him. So, I mean, she had a lot of people feeling sorry for her. But at the second trial, the prosecutor, she said she knew what to expect from the defense and stuff. And what she did, she just used Betty's own words and actions against her. Yeah, she's mental, Leanne. She's got something bad wrong with her. A normal person doesn't act like that about a divorce. Like, I know you would be upset if you put your husband through med school and law school, helped him get through it, took care of the kids and all that. Like, I get that. I get, how someone could feel like they're being replaced or just discarded. But damn, she became obsessed with it. Totally obsessed. She could have moved on with her life. She had a man. She had money. She could have done anything that she wanted to do. But she just had too much hatred for Dan. There, I see Andrew now. I didn't see him at first. I would put the husband through hell, but this is another level. Exactly. I can see wanting a little bit of revenge on Betty's part, wanting him to pay out the ass and stuff like that, but she took it to a whole nother level. And I think some of her kids are okay with her getting out of prison, and then I think there's a couple that's not okay with it. I mean, Betty was just so hard to get along with. She had a hard time finding an attorney. And she would always say, oh, it's because they know Dan and all this and that. But it wasn't because of that. It was just because of the way she acted, the things that she did. It's hard to help someone that's driving their damn car through people's doors and stuff. That's not the only thing she did. One time she went into the house and Linda had baked a cake sent to the kids. The kids made a mistake when Betty showed up unannounced at Dan's house. I think they hadn't been separated long. Anyways, one of the kids told her that Linda made it. She took that cake and took it upstairs and ruined his clothes again. You know, she had burned a bunch of suits before when they were together. Yes, I have seen her interview with Oprah. She's just like, I don't know, she comes off as a little nutty, a little dingy or something. This is like the War of the Roses. I've seen that movie, Andrew. Yeah, it kind of is. Is that where they buy this old house together and they start getting a divorce and then they end up tearing the house apart, fighting with each other? I think I remember it. Looney Tunes. Yeah, she comes off as like a dumb blonde. I'm sorry to use that expression. I'm blonde-headed myself, but I mean, that's the way that she comes off. Like, in her mind, you will never convince Betty Broderick that she's in the wrong for killing Dan and Linda. She thinks that they drove her to do it. What do y'all think? Do y'all think do y'all think someone can drive somebody else to murder? I guess in certain cases like abuse and stuff. But with this case, I think Betty drove herself to murder. Betty is her own worst enemy. I mean, if you go back and you start researching this case, I mean, there's just so many things that she did to Dan. Like, there's like hundreds of phone calls, messages, and stuff. To stop her from using language on his answer machine like that, he created this fine system. He was going to fine her like $1,000 a cuss word, I think. And he was going to like deduct it from her $16,000 a month. I think that's what he was paying her at the time. It may have been a little less. But 1 minute, she was in 1 month, she was in the hole like $1,300. She had called and cussed so much. She didn't care if her kids were listening. She just did awful things. I can't believe that Linda actually married into that mess. I mean, that is a lot. At, I think their oldest daughter's graduation, Linda and Dan were there. Well, Betty shows up there as one of her friends. And Betty kind of moves up front to take pictures as her daughter's getting a diploma. Linda and Dan do the same. Well, Betty turns around and just starts snapping the camera in front of Linda's face. Just over and over and over. Embarrassed her daughter to death. I feel bad for the son who begged her to stop calling and cussing their dad. I know. If you listen to that, it is so pitiful. He actually tells her that it makes him feel weird, what she says about Linda and his dad. It's really pitiful. And I think they played that in court. That did not look good. Linda was very beautiful. But I do think that Dan was having an affair with her before him and Betty separated. I think that's the whole reason that he hired her as his legal assistant. She had no legal skills. She used to be a stewardess. He had a background in psychiatric medicine. He knew how to drive her crazy. Oh, yeah, for sure. I've heard that. I'd say he did know how to make her tick. They said that Dan just didn't have any patience for someone like Betty. So the more Betty acted out, the more closed off Dan was, which infuriated Betty to be ignored. And I can't say that I blame Dan. I can't handle people like that either. I will ignore them. Yes, the affair set her off, Florence. I think Betty felt like he took everything from her after she had did so much for him. I don't know why she didn't realize she had so much to look forward to. I mean, she could have got over him. Yeah, it's hard, but she had her kids to think about. She could have just done anything. But I don't think that she was all there. I think she had some problems before all this mentally. I think she's a little bit of a narcissist too. Because she just don't think she's done anything wrong. It was all them, all them. Well, it always takes two. I'm sure Dan wasn't innocent. I'm sure he done a lot of things to irritate her, and we all know what Betty did. She done tons and tons of things. The best revenge would have been moving on and living a great life. Yes. I think Betty wrote a book, didn't she? I know her daughter wrote a book a few years back. Let's see what else we can find. Okay, for her first trial, it says the trial ended with a hung jury when two of the jurors held out for a manslaughter charge, citing lack of intent. And that's when a mistrial was declared. She was retried a year later with the same defense attorney and prosecutor. It says the second trial was essentially a replay of the first trial. But we know the prosecutor was successful the next time around. So she got found guilty on 2 counts of second-degree murder. And she was sentenced to 2 consecutive terms of 15 years to life, plus 2 years for illegal use of a firearm. I think something that hurt Betty at her second trial was there was a video from the jail that came out, and she was acting crazy as hell, trying to fight the guards and all that, and they had it on camera. She was trying to spitting on them. They also said that she defecated in her cell and smeared it all over the walls. So, I mean, it just made her look even more damn crazy. You can't fight the damn guards at the damn jail. It's not going to end good for you. And Betty is serving her sentence at the California Institute for Women. In January 2010, her first request for parole was denied by the Board of Parole Hearings because she did not show remorse and did not acknowledge wrongdoing. She was also denied parole in November 2011, again in January 2017. And she won't be eligible again until January 2032. Oh, I'm sorry, Andrew. It's pretty gross. I don't know what you would get out of defecating in your cell and wiping it on the walls. Like, I wouldn't want to be in there smelling that crap. I wouldn't want to be touching crap. What the hell? Florence, yes, she went crazy on the guard. And her defense attorney, I heard him say that they just set her up. They just, the jail set her up because the prosecution was looking for any evidence at the jail of her misbehaving or something crap like that. And I was like, yeah, right. How they gonna set somebody up? They ain't gonna make her pooping herself and smear it on the walls. Freaking nut. It is so nasty. She's freaking nut. Let me see. I was trying to look and see what kind of books there was. Hell Hath No Fury. That's one of them. I was trying to look and see what Betty's book was called. See if we can find Betty Broderick book. I know she wrote a book, and of course, you know, she's the victim. Betty Broderick, Telling on Myself. That is the name of the book. Her daughter also wrote a book. Here's another book, Forsaking All Others, The Real Betty Broderick Story. Loretta Swartz wrote that one. I was pretty sure her daughter wrote one. Yeah, here it is. Betty Broderick, My Mom, The Kim Broderick Story. I need to go to the library one day. I bet they have this book. See if there's any new news about her. Jesus Christ, she's 72 years old, guys. I didn't know that. Born November 7th, 1947. Okay. If her next parole hearing is not till 2032, Lord, she may not even be around then. She's been in prison a long, long time. Just scrolling to see what else. Oh, it's saying Diane Downs is 64. Pamela Smart, 52. Darley's 50. Well, if I was a guard, I'd quit. Let me see if I can say her name. Jana Puppy Love. Hey, girl. Cute name. I love puppies, too. Let's see. What was I going to say? I forgot what I was going to say. Damn, my mind went blank, y'all. Oh, my goodness. Let me get on my phone here. Look at the chat now that I'm done reading. I just watched some Diane Downs videos last night. She's a freaking nut, isn't she? Diane Downs is. Pamela Smart. She ain't never getting out either. And Pamela Smart, she won't admit any wrongdoing either. Neither will Darlie Routier. Neither will Diane Downs. They're all freaking innocent, according to them. Routier. Okay, let me cut my media down. We talked about Diane Downs a while back. Susan Smith, I mean, she admits to wrongdoing. I mean, she confessed, of course, but she still says that she's not a monster. They're all monsters, in my opinion. Okay. Did y'all see that video? Let's change the subject. Did y'all see that video I did about Fotis Delos this morning? So, Fox 61 News got a hold of the voice recordings that Fotis had left his lawyer's estranged wife, Kent Mulvaney's estranged wife. Yeah, and they're kind of creepy. I think those two conspired together to help each other get rid of their wives. I remember my mother not getting mad at my brother, who immediately said she did it. Boy, we were naive then. Oh, Susan Smith. Are you talking about Susan Smith? Susan. Yeah, my granny said when she was on the news one day, she said that woman killed her kids. She will not look up and make eye contact. She's acting funny. Sure enough, she did. Susan, she's freaking something else. She's had STDs while being in prison. She's been in trouble for having sex with inmates, having sex with two of the guards who actually lost their job over that nasty thing. I don't know who could sleep with that woman knowing she had her kids strapped in a damn car and sent them down in a lake to drown. I don't know who could touch someone like that. She should have been put to death. I've never saw that film, Andrew. I'd like to. I love Hitchcock. I love old black and white movies. I've watched a lot of Hitchcock stuff. I like Boris Karloff too. I agree. Susan Smith should be dead. Yeah, they should have. They should have done her the same way she did her kids. That's what I think. Probably shouldn't say that. I don't really care. I can't stand Susan Smith. She's an evil, evil person. Strangers on a Train. I don't know if I've seen that one, Andrew. I'll have to check that out. Let me write that down. I love watching the older movies, especially the older like horror movies and stuff. I watch The Twilight Zone every damn morning on Sci-Fi Channel. It comes on about 6 o'clock. Like on Mondays, they have more episodes, but usually just during the week, it's just like a couple of episodes in the morning. But you can find all the Twilight Zone on YouTube. And Thriller, which never aired on TV. It's kind of like the Twilight Zone, except Boris Karloff hosts it. I love it. I may have seen this, but just don't remember it. I'll tell y'all what I've been into watching lately. I have become obsessed with learning about Michael Jackson. I don't know why. Just trying to figure out, if he really was a child molester or not. I know I'm not going to figure it out, but right now in my mind, I go back and forth. A little bit of his behavior was strange with kids, but then again, as you learn about Michael Jackson didn't have a childhood. And I think he was trying to relive his childhood. I'm not sure. Go back and forth with it. Susan, when the divers went down and found the car, one of the little boys' hand was pressed up against the window, like he's trying to get out. That evil, evil, evil woman. And she's on TV giving them interviews. I mean, I know I talk country and stuff, but she just sounded so ignorant. I want my babies back home. Just, I can't stand the way she talks. And I know I probably sound similar. I hope not. My boys are my life. I mean, I just cannot stand that woman. You know what's strange is there were some people that went and visited the lake where the kids were drowned at. And the van actually come out, the gear come out of place or something. But anyways, there was more kids that drowned there. That's so weird. Yes, I did watch Leaving Neverland. And I also watched a good documentary about, God, what is the name of it? Living with Michael Jackson. This reporter travels around with Michael Jackson and interviews him and stuff. It was really, really interesting. Let me see if I can find out what that was. Well, what happened to my phone? I think it's Living in Neverland. Let me look real quick because I just watched it. Yeah, I've just been watching like a lot of interviews about him, or a lot of documentaries about him, watching a lot of interviews that he gave and stuff. And I used to really think he was a child molester. Um, I'm not quite sure about that anymore. I think that he was really damaged as a child. His dad was abusive, he said. I think he was just a very insecure person. He had all those surgeries because his dad used to tell him he had a big nose and stuff. Okay, it's called Living with Michael Jackson. I was trying to see. Okay, the interviewer's name, Martin Basher, maybe? Martin Basher. I thought he did a really good job. Now, I heard that Michael Jackson was not happy about this documentary. They said that it made him look bad, but I actually didn't think it made him look bad. The guy was just asking questions that everybody want to know. Everybody wants to know what's the deal with the kids. It's basically what he asked him. But I do recommend watching that. It's Living with Michael Jackson. Also watched another one called Michael Jackson's Pedophile World. It just talks about all. It is kind of strange the way he did those boys. It is. Bashir. Sheer? Is that how I'm saying it? Bashir? Bashir, maybe. I watched some of his depositions on YouTube. Yeah, he acted a little strange in that, didn't he, Susan? His deposition. They said I think he smiles and stuff when he's nervous. Janet does that too, I've noticed. I don't know if that's the same guy that interviewed Osama bin Laden. I had never heard of this guy until I was watching another documentary, and they mentioned the Living with Michael Jackson documentary. So that's how I felt that. Be sure rhymes with fair. You know what I have to do when I can't pronounce stuff? I look it up. They got this Pronounce It channel on YouTube. It helps me a lot. He was really strange. He was really eccentric, Susan. And I think a lot of it's got to do with his childhood. I think he had all those plastic surgeries. And that's another thing. He denied, the guy asked him about the plastic surgeries, and Michael Jackson denied it. The only one he would admit to was getting a nose job. And the reason he got a nose job, he said, was because his dad always told him his nose was big. But anyways, I kind of felt like he had all those plastic surgeries so it could be like wearing a mask. So nobody could really like see the real him. He was also asked about his skin color, because over time his skin got really, really light. And he said that he had some kind of disease that made his skin like that. I don't believe that. It's possible, but it looks like he had his skin lightened. And at the end of the documentary, they do the last sit-down interview, and Michael Jackson is taping up around his nails. Like, why did he tape all of his nails for? He wrapped tape around them all. He was insanely talented, though. I know, I've been listening to his music. The first record I ever owned in my life was Michael Jackson, and it had the song The Way You Make Me Feel. because when I was little, I was a big Michael Jackson fan for a while. And I got a new Fisher-Price record player and a Michael Jackson little record. Yeah, like, he was amazing at dancing. I've tried to moonwalk a million times, cannot do it. During that documentary, he's saying, like, you gotta do it, like, on your heels some way. Well, that's what I thought too. The skin disease makes your skin look, like, splotchy like. I know someone that's got a skin disease and their skin is got, like, big white spots on it. Now, Michael Jackson's skin to me didn't look like that. I always wondered what he looked like without makeup. I mean, he ruined himself. I'm just gonna be honest. I think that all that plastic surgery ruined him. He didn't look real. Not to me. He looked like a mannequin or something. I also heard he had a prosthetic nose because he had had so many nose jobs, it, like, done something to his nose. And he just kept, during that interview, he just kept denying ever having, like the cheek implants and everything. We all know what he looked like in Thriller, and then after that, he looked totally different. See, the guy that did that documentary, Mac and Cheese, was with Michael when he did that. Where was it at, in Germany? Yeah, and he asked him about it, and he's like, the fans wanted to see the baby. I had a tight grip on him. I wasn't trying to murder my child. Yeah, he was really cute before the surgeries. I don't know why he did that to himself. I'm starting the documentary now. Watch it, girl. It is great. I'm getting ready to sign off anyways. Well, y'all, I will see y'all in the morning. I'm going to get off here, make me some breakfast. 'Cause I don't eat when I first get up. I have to wait at least 3 or 4 hours before I eat. His chin looked odd. He had something done to his chin. But have you noticed that Michael's nose, Janet's nose, and LaToya's nose is all made, they had them all made the same. So their dad must have really drove down their self-esteem and stuff about their nose. He must have pointed it out. I thought their noses looked great myself before surgery. Michael also had that little dimple thing put in his chin too. Denied that. Smooth Criminal. I love that song, Mac and Cheese. Bye, Florence, Susan, Mac and Cheese, Andrew, Jana, Puppy Love. If I missed anybody, I'm sorry. Bye, guys. Y'all have a great day, and I will see y'all in the morning. I'll probably be bitching about photostulos. Bye. Be kind. Peace.